Hey everyone out in YouTube, how you doing? Today we're drawing the ear in pencil. I'm going to go ahead and go to Facebook as well. Let's see how that goes. And we're going to go drawing the ear in pencil and start broadcast. And so right now we're beginning both in both YouTube and Facebook. Let me go to Facebook and see if that's happening. It's not easy doing both at one time, but I think we can get this done. Let's see. Okay, cool. So it looks like we are in business. Is anybody here yet? Good, no one's here. I'll just wait until someone shows up. Anyone? Anyone? So let me go to the different screen here, and we'll just talk about what we're going to do beforehand. So let's see. Okay, so here we are, and I'm just going to darken things up and just, ooh, that's really light, huh? Let's lower that a bit. There we go. So this is how we're just going to do it. We're going to start working so let's see who's here. I do see somebody here. Let's see. Hey, John, Denise, how's it going? Milan, how you guys doing? Good to see you today. So we are, and these are my YouTube people, so that's very cool. I'm so glad to see you. And then let's see what's happening over in Facebook world. And in Facebook, we have 3 people so far, which is very good. And I'm very happy. Now, all of you have seen the human ear, right? The human ear is, you know, something that, you know, we see every day, but we don't really understand it. We don't really look at it. And so it has definite parts in the ear. And that's what I'm here for, is definitely to show you guys that it's not just an ear, that there's definite anatomical parts that make up an ear that are pretty much in everyone's ear unless there's an anomaly. There's always an anomaly, right? So that's true. Hey, Tone, good to see you. How are you, my friend? Brad, nice to see you. Denise has her wine, so she's ready. That's pretty cool. And so this is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be like, hey, you know, this is going to be like a beautiful ear or something. No, this is just to show you guys. Catherine, good to see you. How are you? So it's basically just to acclimate you when you do see an ear in a painting. Cheryl, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you so much, all the way from Canada. And so, and Catherine is from Belgium. Am I correct, Catherine? So that's pretty cool. We got Canada in the house. Milan, where are you from, sir? And so we got a nice international group, and John's here. And I'm so glad you're here, John. And so basically what we have to do is, hey Adrian, good to see you. How are you, my friend? I'm so glad you're here. So I have a bunch of anatomy books I'll be referring to, and just talking about the ear, the different parts of the ear, and what makes it anatomically correct. Oh, the sound's on mute, thank goodness. Oh, I'm glad. So, you know, what I recommend is getting some good anatomy books. Here's one anatomy book I have by Joseph Shepard, Anatomy, A Complete Guide for Artists. They're not like beautiful illustrations, but they're very informative as to, you know, and very accurate as to different parts of the human anatomy. So highly recommend that, very important. And so what I'm going to do is get you guys ready, get your, yes, Belgium, oh, 3 a.m. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, especially in this late hour. So I'm honored that you would give up some sleep to hang out with me, Catherine. So thank you. So we're going to work on the ear. So get out your paper and everything. I got my coffee. If you have coffee or wine, that's all good. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just showing you the different parts of the ear and how easy it is to start an ear off, okay? And we're going to start with my on digital just so I can erase and show you guys real quick, and I want you guys to follow along, and then we're going to go ahead and draw the ear together. So that would be cool. So let's see here, scene 5. We are at Critter, and let's go ahead and make this happen. So here we are, and you guys can see. Now, these are the different parts of the ear, and they're in every ear. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to construct an ear pretty easily, okay? Now, if you look at an ear, it basically resembles like a conch shell, or something like that, like a seashell, that sort of thing. So the first thing you want to do is you want to get this shape right here, and this is basically the shape of an ear, right? And so this is pretty much what you want to start with, just like that. So that would be your basic shape of an ear. And so this right here, of course, is probably the most outwardly looking shape that you're going to see in the ear. And this is called the helix, okay? And not to be mistaken with Felix. This is the helix. Now, there's going to be an antihelix, and a regular helix. The antihelix is probably the alternate personality that hates the original. No, I don't think so. But it's going to be, it's a very important part of the helix. So this is, it basically follows along just like that, right? But what this does, the antihelix splits up into two. So what you're going to do is split this up into two parts right here. It becomes like a Y. And so that would be, and this would be your antihelix. And if you look at your own ear, you'll see like, wow, I have that. That's weird, right? And then you're going to have different parts of this particular helix. Now the helix has a leg, and that goes all the way under like this. This is called the leg of the helix, right? And then we have the antihelix. Now remember, that splits up into two. They run parallel here, but not this. They don't turn like this. They sort of go much higher. And these are called the legs of the antihelix. Sounds like a bad movie. Okay, legs of the antihelix, right? And then we have different parts. Now, this, of course, everyone knows this. This is just the earlobe, right? And then if you notice on the earlobe, just as it goes like towards the back of your head, just above here is a notch like that. And that is called your tragus. Okay? And that basically concludes everything that you would need except for this one right here. You see this triangle? That is called the triangular fossa. Now, if you remember all these parts, you will, and it's not many parts, you will have no trouble drawing an ear, honestly. You'll have no trouble whatsoever. So if we go ahead and look at it, that pretty much looks like an ear, but that is, in a sense, the gist of the anatomy of an ear. You get that correctly, the rest is all smooth sailing. And if you ever look at a painting and doesn't have those particular elements, then that artist was not careful to pay attention to what they were drawing, or the person was a mutant. Either one. So let's go ahead and go back to here, and let's see. Okay, so yes, no digging up dead bodies, Michelle. Denise, that's a very bad thing. So I'm going to move this out, and together we're going to go ahead and draw our first ear, which is very exciting. So we have this young lady's ear here. You guys can see her. And we have our eraser, and it's going to be very simple. So following along, guys, let me just lighten this up. And so the first thing we're going to do is always what? We're always going to draw the helix first. That's the main thing of the ear. So always draw the helix first. And you can get any picture of an ear. It doesn't have to be this picture. So as you see, we have the, and I'll even go ahead and I'll mark it. So this is the helix. And now we need the, now the helix, of course, you see how it extends right over here. Let me see if anyone's talking over in Facebook world. Okay, cool. So, hey, Keith, how's it going? Tallahassee in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Okay, so as you see, we're just refining this helix here that comes all the way around. And it does have sort of a conch shell kind of look to it, doesn't it? And so that's basically, you know, very easy if you think about that way, what it looks like. And also the helix is part of a conch shell. So now we're going to do the antihelix. And remember, the antihelix hates the helix. And we're just going to extend this, and then we'll mark these different things. And it's so great because once you know the parts, it just gets so easy drawing something as complicated as this. Here, Veronica, how's it going? Oh, great. Got in through YouTube. Okay, perfect. Willie, how's it going? Good to see you, my friend. So basically, you know, we have the helix and then the antihelix. And so as you see, these two come in. So I'm going to mark this as the antihelix because they hate the helix. They're arch enemies, I guess. Okay. And so now we got that. And hey, Phil, how's it going? Good to see you. That does look like an ear, doesn't it, Phil? And so as we are looking at the different parts of the ear, we can always refer to our diagram, right? So if we are back here, we can always refer and say, let me go back to critter here. Okay, so you see, here are our parts, and you see it does match. We have the helix, and then, of course, then we had the antihelix. And now let's go ahead and look for the triangular fossa, okay? And it's important that you guys just, you know, mark this down and remember it, because it will really pay dividends when you are doing your own work, and you'll really impress your friends when you can say, wow, you have a nice triangular fossa. And they might want to smack you, but it's good to know those really important anatomical landmarks. And this is, of course, the triangular fossa. All right. Yes, Willie. Yes, try not to tell a woman that she has a beautiful triangular fossa. I guess unless you're married to her. And you see, now we're just doing these really big shapes, and everything is like much easier. And taking something like an ear, if I didn't tell you guys the different parts of the ear and the landmarks to look for, that would have been much more difficult to try and draw. Am I right? So there is a method to my madness. Okay, and let's go back to Facebook land. Hey, Sheila, how's it going? Good to see you. Angela, nice to see you guys. So cool. So what we're going to do is we did our triangular fossa, as you can see there. We have our antihelix and our helix. And let's just get some easy parts. And the easy part, of course, I miss seeing you, Sheila. So right here, of course, is the earlobe. That's pretty easy. Everyone can locate the earlobe. Triangular fossa might be a little bit different. Oh, and Phil says if you do that, you are more likely to get a smack on your Yes, the triangular fossa is very delicate to getting smacked. That will hurt. And, oh, it's set to friends. Well, that's not good. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and rectify that. Yeah, we don't want you guys. Of course, I want my friends, but I want everyone to be able to go ahead and join along. So that's perfect. Thank you so much for that. Good, very good heads up. And let's see, we're just going to make that big again. Okay, cool. Very good catch there, Cheryl. Thank you. So that's good. So we have our triangular fossa, we have our earlobe, and now we are going to look for some other shapes that we definitely can catch. So I'm going to go back to my diagram here, and what we can look for are the leg of the helix and the legs of the antihelix. So let's go ahead and look for that together, okay? And there we go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look for is the leg of the helix. And you see how this sort of comes up here and sort of tucks in? This, of course, is the leg of the helix. Now we have to look for the legs of the antihelix. And you see that her second leg or first leg of the antihelix is really not as pronounced as our diagram. Some people have it more stronger, and some people don't, like this young lady here. So, and right here are her legs of her antihelix. And so you can go to someone and say, hey, you have nice legs. I meant your antihelix, not your actual legs. So I'm going to definitely use that line. That should be very successful. Okay, so legs of the antihelix. Okay, so we have the legs of the antihelix. We have the helix. Let me lower that so I guess you guys can't see it. Let me go ahead and make it a little bit. There we go. Now you can see my diagram, which is good. Okay, very cool. So now that we have that taken care of, we have to work on the tragus. Now the tragus is interesting. You'll see it's right over here. It's like this little notch here. And so you see how this sort of comes out like this little notch. This is called the tragus. Now there are a lot of other parts. Now if you look at the back of your ear and you feel the back of your ear in that big cup there, there's like a big cup in the back of your ear. That is interesting. So if I'll show you right here, let me just go to this screen here. Just be one moment. Okay, so you see this little area here where that cup is, sort of the bowl, so to speak. That's called the concha, C-O-N-C-A. And you don't really see that at all, except for when you're looking at it from behind. That's the only time you're actually going to see the concha. So, so you see right here from the back, if you look here, you have the helix from the back view, and then you have the concha, and then this sort of connects right here. So, but we usually like to, I was an ear, yeah, I didn't do the nose or the throat because, it's just too much. I just was an ear guy. And Denise says, I feel like I'm back in anatomy and physiology. Yes, but there's a method to my madness, though, Denise, because it's actually going to come together when you are working and looking at your own portraits. I know it's like really in depth, but once you have the main idea of an ear, it's not going to be so difficult anymore. At least it wasn't for me. It really helped me out. So, okay, so what I want is I'm going to go to, okay, here's our drawing, and there's our photograph. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and start to draw the ear because we have it pretty much set up. Phil says, concha, is that from like the concha shell? I imagine, because it does have that shape, right, Phil? And so, like a lot of the these words here, the helix, the antihelix, the triangular fossa, and all those different words are Latin, so they definitely come from, you know, words that we know already. So that's pretty cool. Like the one thing that I say a lot is the sternocleidomastoid, and the clues of what it is pretty much, you know, pretty much helps us. The mastoid, the sterno, which is the sternum, the cleido, which is the clavicle, and the mastoid, which is in back of the ear, and that muscle connects all those three anatomical forms together, or landmarks, which is pretty cool. With all these pickup lines, no wonder you're single. Yeah, I don't think there's much of a wonder to that, my friend. This is true. Okay, so now we are doing well, and now that we have all of that, we can actually go in and start to draw this ear, and we'll do that together. We'll leave the landmarks on there, and then we'll go ahead and just erase them afterwards. So think of how much easier it was to do the ear when you knew how to, you know, what landmarks, where the anatomy was. And just with that, it just makes life so much easier. Anatomy is not just for doctors, it's for artists, and it makes our life so much easier. So the first thing we're going to do, since we have, now is everyone caught up where we are at this stage? The first thing we're going to work on is the dark right above the ear, and that's right here. We're just going to pull up right here, like, let's see. So we have the antihelix, right? And the antihelix is actually being a shadow is being cast from the helix. Do you see that? See, now I feel like I'm talking to a lot of doctors. So I can actually say that the antihelix is having a shadow cast from the helix, and you guys all know what I'm talking about, which is cool. So now we're just going to go ahead and lightly shadow this. And you see, we're going to make sure that, see right here, it sort of almost connects with the shadow here. This leg almost connects with the shadow, but it doesn't quite. Now remember the TP, right? Toilet paper, very important, be right there. Now this is a real art class that I'm sharing with you. This is something that this is like a college level art class, or maybe at the National Academy, a School of Fine Arts. So this is really good stuff. And you know, there is some technical stuff to it, but it's going to make your fun doing, you know, much better. You know, it's going to make life a lot more fun. Oh yes, so you were in nursing, Denise, so that makes your life that makes your life, as far as this class, easier, because you already have some information on human anatomy, which is fantastic. And so as you see that, we're going to shadow that, the cast shadow from the helix down to the antihelix. Now here is the leg of right here you see is the leg of the helix, right? And you want to pay attention to angles. And you also want to pay attention to this shape here of the leg of the helix, okay? Very important. And just like here, so you see the helix is casting a shadow on the antihelix, and then here this leg of the antihelix is casting a shadow basically on the inner part of the ear, which is part of the concha. And then you could use your TP. I remember one time I was talking with a physician, and we were talking, I don't know how it came up, conversation was anatomy, and I started talking about anatomy, and he was talking about it, and we were going back and forth, and he says, "So Tim, what medical school did you go to?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just an artist, you know." The number one rule, that's right, the 1 second rule, that is everything, definitely. Very good. So Phil is a student of mine, a very good student, and the 1 second rule is very important. So if you want to draw for a second, you have to look for a second first. And with that ratio, could be 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 1 second, but it has to have that 1:1 ratio. So that's very astute. So thank you, sir. So the 1 second rule is everything. And that's what I teach in my workshops and my mentorship. And that's what takes your art to that next level. And takes your powers of observation to that next level. So we're just going to do the large shadow shapes first. So right here you have the helix. And we could fix it now, you know, because now we are drawing this individual helix. Yours doesn't have to be perfect, but if you do the 1 second rule, you'll be able to see if anything is off glaringly. And we can just fix that. So that's what, you know, my job is as an art teacher, as a someone who you know, helps people, you know, draw and paint to their full potential, is taking the complex and making it simple. And I think that's one of the most important things that an art teacher can do. And if you can do that, take the complex and make it simple, then you've done your job and you exceeded your own expectations, and then your student will exceed their expectations, and that's how it should work. Whether it works like that all the time, but that's how it should work. Okay, so you see right there. So now we have the antihelix, which is coming down, and look, I kind of blew it over here. So we got to bring that antihelix in further. But it's really cool because now you guys know, and you guys can actually see the difference of the antihelix when it's incorrect and correct. Now this is just an individual thing. Some people's antihelix come further out, some go in, some connect even further. So there's a lot of individual characteristics of people's anatomy, but the principles and the general anatomical landmarks are usually very, very universal. Okay, you see that? So what I had to do is I had to bring the helix and the antihelix pretty close to one another. So you see here, this is darker, and then over here we have a lighter shade. So what you want to do is you want to use less pressure in your pencil, and you want to shade lighter here, and now you see right here you want to just shade part of the antihelix, okay? Not all the way, because you see there's light hitting here. like we did the eye and the egg, the same thing, we have to pay attention. So if we're looking and we study this, so it basically the light is coming from above and slightly to the right, slightly from the right. So with that being said, below and to the left is where the shadow is going to be. So we're just going to lightly shadow this part of the antihelix. And it's going to really come together. So Denise says it really helps her. I have some background, but I have honed in on the skills. Oh, thank you. That's great, Denise. Anytime I can help, that's so important to me. And you know, Denise, you've been to art school, so you have a lot of talent. So, you know, it's plain to see. Okay, so you see now we can go ahead, since we did it lightly, not as hard as the darks, right? So we have to make sure that we don't go too dark. So you see that now you can see we're starting to have the form of the antihelix come together a little bit. Now right here, you have the triangular fossa, but it sort of blends into the cast shadow of the helix. Now for those, you know, airbrush guys out there, you know, I love your work and everything. This will really help you. This will really bring your work to that next level. Not that it needs to be at that next level, but it would really, I don't know how to say, it just will, you know, it's always better to understand, like on an intellectual way, of what we're painting. Instead of just having, like, you know, perfect observational skills, but you can probably say a lot more. You would be able to say a lot more if you knew what was happening with, let's say, the ear or the wrist or something like that. So what I want to do is darken the cast shadow of this leg of the antihelix. You see that? And then we'll use the TP to go ahead. And so Phil says it's 1 second before Tim gets bored of teaching me. No way. Never, Phil. You're a lot of fun to teach. Always a pleasure, my friend. Okay, so you see that's the antihelix, and that makes a lot of sense, and that's what we're doing. We're making sense of the ear, but see, the thing is, if I didn't know about the helix, the antihelix, the tragus, the legs of the helix, the legs of the antihelix, this would be like really impossible. And if I was going over this with you, and you know, we were just painting this, I guarantee everyone would be lost really fast, including myself. So now it just makes so much more sense. Now over here, we can, like you always say, you can always look and see where you could draw better, where you can draw more accurately. And as you can see here, I could draw more accurately here, that her ear comes to a little point just like that. Now, what are we drawing? We're drawing the helix, right? So that's what we're working on. So we got to make sure that the helix is correct, because if it isn't, it's going to draw off the antihelix and the lobe and everything. But breaking it down into its smaller anatomical parts makes life so much easier. So very cool stuff. And you know, I used to know this, and you know, then I forget, then I have to go ahead and study again, and I forget, so I'm always going back. You know, we're not doctors, so we're not going to have that, or nurses, we're not going to have that day-to-day reference to it, so we have to make sure. So here, look at her tragus here. I know, I'm going to get in trouble. Almost sounds like this should be a demonetized video. So, as you see the tragus here, and it comes out, and then right here is her canal, ear canal. I don't know if that's the technical term, but this piece of skin or cartilage right here, that's the tragus. So we're going to darken this pretty much, and we're just going to use some of our cross hatching, just going over it and darken it as like that. That would be really good. I suggest I'm going to continue during this lockdown. I'm going to continue doing these weekly live streams. I think they're really important and they really will help you. Oh, okay, so it's really late. Phil's in the UK, so I really appreciate that. And let's see. Phil says it's not the time, but it's getting late here, so he should be sleeping. Just wanted to say that Tim is a fantastic teacher, and if you haven't signed up for his mentorship program, you should really think about it. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. Yes, the mentorship program is something I'm just rolling out, and basically it's me taking a student under their wing, which is really great. Take care, my friend. Have a great night. So all the way from the UK, Mr. Phil. Thank you, sir. So now we went ahead and did this little ear canal here. And so little by little, as you can see the reference. Let me see if I could make that reference a little bit bigger for you guys. You never know, right? Let's see if the magic... Wow, look at that, guys. That's pretty cool. Okay, so there's her ear, nice and big, so everyone can see her. And let's go back to here, and let's continue. So we did that. So now we can look at the different parts of her ear. Okay, so right here you see her earlobe. Let's make sure that earlobe is correct. And we're just going to pull this out like this. There we go. There we go. So here's her earlobe, and then we're going to make sure that we shape her helix correctly. Now remember, the light is coming from the right and up top. So with that being said, just like the anatomy, it's a lot easier to understand where the light is coming from, because intellectually we know where the light is coming from, so the shadow is going to be coming from the different direction, the opposite direction. So let's go ahead. Remember, this part is going to be light, so we're going to lightly shadow the underside, which is to the left and on the bottom. To the left and on the bottom. So that's really going to make our life easier when we're drawing anything. Remember, if you're drawing an egg, if you're drawing the model's toe, if you're drawing her face, her nose, her eye, everything is affected in the same way as that egg from the light source. If the light is facing from the right, the shadow is going to be from the left. If the light's facing from on top, the shadow is going to be on bottom. If the light is facing from the right, the cast shadow is going to be on the opposite side. So it's all the same principle. So remember, we started out with the egg, the eye, the lips, and now we get more complicated. This is pretty complicated stuff, but I definitely wouldn't spring it on you with the first lesson, because it would be too much. And as I do more lessons and you follow along, there'll be more disciplined, meaning asking a little bit more from you to learn. But that's what good teachers do. They push their students. And so, okay, so now you see I went ahead and did that. Let's go ahead and take our TP, and we're going to, so you see how that ear is really starting to come together. Now you all have this this diagram, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and put the diagram on my Facebook page, and you'll be able to go ahead and download that and study those parts. And then so you don't always do a portrait that has an ear that is facing from the side of the head, but you will. And you will see very shortly, you'll see a portrait that will have the ear, and you'll see if it's off. You'll be like, wow, that they really screwed that up because they weren't paying too much attention to a correct ear. Now, since we did that, we can go ahead and pull up some of those lights. So right here, you see we can, on the edge of the helix, it's going to pick up some of the light because it's facing the upper right part of, see that? It's facing upper right, so that means it's going to be getting the light from whatever light source, whether it's the window or a lamp or what have you. It's going to be picking up that light. There we go. And of course, we've got to make sure that we have the shadow facing, but not a hard line. We don't want a line. We want to just have the shadow up against the light of the helix. So you don't want to put a line. You do a line at first, but then afterwards you're going to do a value shape. Remember we talked about values last week. You want to have a value shape up against a light shape, so a dark up against a light. That's very important. Now I do recommend, if you're following my classes, to get yourself some stumps. They'll make your life a lot easier. You won't have to use the TP, but until, definitely TP is okay. So remember, upper light, the upper right is where the light is coming from, lower left is where the shadows are. So the light's coming from here, so on the lower part of this leg of the antihelix, we're going to see a shadow. And you're just going to go ahead and shape that. And this is just like drawing the lips as we did last week. Remember, it's the same thing. There's no difference. It's just a different form that's being affected by light and shade. Yeah, so Rick has a quick question about my Airbrush India inks. Yes, Rick, my Airbrush India inks are inks that I devised over the years that are perfectly mixed for airbrush painting, especially portraits. You have the light mixture for the very beginning when you just start. And then as you want to put more detail, I have the medium mixture, which are diluted over years to have the perfect, the perfect consistency, and they don't clog ever. And at the end, you have the dark mixture. So and I have a lot of videos on my YouTube channel that go ahead and explain it. You can get my whole set, which consists of 2 light mixtures, a medium and a dark, and that is only $16.95. And there's a link in the description field right here in the title underneath. You can see the link to that, and I'll put that for you right here. We're just going to copy and paste that. There you go. So that's a link to my inks, and that rhymes, which is rather fortunate. So that should be like my new slogan. Follow the links to my inks. And what do you think about that, Willie? Does that sound good? Or Brad, what do you think? The links to my inks? Okay, so that's pretty much how it comes down. And so right now, remember, this leg of the antihelix is being affected by the light as well. So right here, since it's on the bottom, this is away from the light, it really will be affected. So you'll see a little shadow. So once you do that, you want to make sure oh no, unfortunately I don't. These Rick, these are I make these myself, so they come from me, but I don't do any wholesale, unfortunately. I do have a 10% off code if you ever want to purchase anything from Badger, Badger Airbrushes. I can help you out there because Badger is a friend of my YouTube channel, which is great. Oh, thank you, Willie. So Willie says that my inks are awesome. That means a lot to me. Thank you, my friend. And they're really invented with the in mind for people who are getting fed up with airbrushing. It's always clogging and with acrylic, and they're getting too dark too early. So it really is important to the reason why I did it was to make sure that people are enjoying their airbrush. So right here, remember, the whole thing is the light is coming from the upper right, so anything underneath that's not facing the light but is underneath another form is going to hit shadow. So right here, this is going to be in shadow here. Much darker because there's this form from this leg of the helix. It's casting a little bit of a shadow. And then it's coming down into the ear canal. And then of course this is in shadow. So what we'll end up, guys, hey Steven, how's it going? Good to see you, my friend. So what we're going to end up with is, it might not be the perfect ear for this particular model, but it will be an anatomically perfect ear, which will be exciting if you just follow those diagrams, that it will be perfect. Brad says he's a softie when you're in the mentorship program. Oh, thank you, my friend. And I appreciate that. Brad says that the inks are awesome. And thank you so much. I appreciate that, my friend. So yes, the best advertisement is definitely happy users of any product, and I'm glad that that they're effective and they work. So that makes me happy. Thank you guys for that. And as you see, we're just making sure that we now that we know that there are different forms within the ear, we can actually do the lights and darks of each of those forms. So that's pretty easy when you think about that. That the ear is basically a series of forms within a larger form. And when we think of it that way, it really takes the mystery out of it. And then when we see someone else's ear and they're not paying attention to the anatomy, it's really glaring. And so that's why we have to make our work that much more profound, we have to make sure that we take that extra step, We have to take that extra step of learning the anatomical structures. There we go. Okay. Now let's go ahead and continue with some other structures in this ear. All right. Now, so we have that, and what else? What other structure? Okay, so you see how the antihelix sort of bleeds into and is attached to the lobe. So they sort of insert into one another. So right here is where the antihelix sort of stops, and right here is where the lobe is sort of coming together. And we have a light shadow here because of the indentation that the antihelix is making, and sort of creating this sort of reverberation or rippling effect into the form of the ear here. That's where you got to look at, when you paint the human form, is that when you are when you're looking at the human form in different anatomical parts, such as the deltoid, as it connects and covers the tricep, and as the tricep comes out, there's a rippling effect from one muscle to another. It's a tapestry, and that's what we really have to pay attention to, that tapestry. And remember when I talked about reflected light in the egg a couple of weeks back and how that's so important? Well, it is so important, but you'll see, like right here, the antihelix is getting some reflected light, interesting enough, from the helix. See that? So that's pretty cool. So the lesson of the egg is actually paying off when we are drawing this ear here. Now this would be perfect if you're doing an oil painting or if you're doing an airbrush painting to really understand what's happening. So that's and I could see I don't have anybody here. There's only one person in Facebook. So my this question goes out to my YouTube people. Do you think this is too hard for most people? And they just like, nah, I'm not going to do it. What do you guys think? I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter if people like it or not. It's a really important lesson, and I don't placate, people. So my thing is, I give people what they need, not what they want. So, but what do you think? You think that, this is too hard for most Facebook people, and they're just like, I can't do it. But it really isn't hard. It's very easy. It just seems hard. And I'm just going to deepen this shadow here. And so as you see, as I deepen that shadow, what I have to do... Oh, thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. And Cheryl's a very serious artist, I can see, so thank you for that. So you see, as we pay attention to the shadow, look how that ear is really... Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Denise. Denise says, as a teacher, she doesn't think that it's too hard, so that's good. So, but just look how the very complicated ear, oh, great, so Brad's friend is following along. Very cool. And as you can see, when we are breaking things down into their simplest components or simple parts, the whole task becomes much easier. Steve said, Catherine says, I have always found ears to be terribly difficult, perhaps after some more practice with your help and tuition. Oh, that's so cool. Yes, definitely. Once you break down the different parts of that ear, it really will change things for you. So keep doing that. And Steven says, I couldn't keep up with the comments on 2 platforms at the same time. Oh, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I actually used to do 3 different platforms. I used to do Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook at the same time. And, I have a pretty good following, Steve, but not huge yet. So right now I'm still able to do that. But if I get a little bit more of a following, then I think something like this wouldn't be possible. Now, John says, it's harder with an airbrush than it is with a pencil, I think. Actually, it's very cool that you said that. That's great, John. So how I would approach this, I would draw it out first with a pencil. And then when I'm doing the values, I'll come in with the airbrush. So in a sense, I think the airbrush would make it easier because I'll be able to get those values and those gradations a lot easier. So, but the pencil, like if I was going to do this straight with airbrush, it would be very difficult. Very true, John. So I definitely would use my friend the pencil during it, you know, in the beginning. And even as I'm going to make sure that I continue doing that. Even when I'm with the airbrush, I'm going to continue using the pencil. It's a lot easier to draw with the pencil than any airbrush. And, you know, even you know, a micron, or in my case, the Extreme Patriot Arrow, which I have, I get great detail with, the pencil still beats it. So I always the pencil, always keep that pencil going. So I'm going to deepen. Now, in the last lesson, we talked about how the 6B is very important, and you should get a woodless graphite 6B. They're very crucial. And so as you see, we have this darkest dark inside here. So I'm just going to use my woodless graphite. Because with the woodless graphite 6B, you don't want to go any harder than this, then it gets, any softer than this, then it gets too soft. So you see that? And then we have some really deep shadows over here. And remember my whole thing is that first the line, then the shape, then the value, then the edge. So those are the things you have to worry about. So first we worked out the line, then the shape, and now the edge. So now we're going to be looking for the edge work. So there's some really hard edges over here, and I'm going to accentuate them with doing some really deep darks, and I'm going to use the 6B in a circular motion. And what that does, it ensures that you don't get, you know, any kind of, you know, strokes. Some people like doing those strokes like that, but not me. But that's just me, you know, and everyone's different. So as you see, now I can go ahead and really deepen those really deep recesses of this ear where it's no light is even reaching over here. You see that? So that gives much more form to that ear. And of course, remember this over here, which was the ear canal. I don't know exactly what the anatomical word for that is. Oddly enough, my anatomy books are not too involved in that. Let's see. Oh, okay, so that is called the auditory meatus. Okay, the auditory meatus. That is this one right here. So we don't have to know. We can just call that the ear canal. That would be just fine. So Willie agrees that the pencil along with the airbrush are a very good combination, make life easier. And I always do that, even when I'm working in color, you know, with, let's say, Createx paints or with India inks or in pastel. Go ahead and get the little quieter shadows in there. Now right here, we want to get that little deeper value here. And then here is a soft value. It's not as dark as this. And we just bring that up. Okay, remember we want to get rid of lines when we can. And that's important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up getting rid of this line here. It really isn't a line, it's one value next to another. So my thing is Cheryl says, note to self, ditch the cheap store sketch pad. Yes, definitely, your art deserves the best. Now we all have a budget, definitely, and there's nothing wrong with being on a budget. There's no fault in that, but always get the best supplies you can, because God bless you, one day you might just do the next Mona Lisa, and you don't want it to be on newsprint pad, right? So what I do is I'm just going to get this shadow shape which is in the concha here. And here is the tragus, and right here as it moves into the lobe. I'm just going to get this value shape. Remember, first we get the value, then the edges. So with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make sure we get that light edge right up against that dark there, or that mid-tone. So we can actually put the eraser right over where the line was. And it just gives you an added bit of realism. Just like that. And then you can take your TP, or in my case my stump, and you can go ahead and basically what you're doing is getting rid of any artificial lines that aren't there. And that of course is advanced stuff, you know. So what I want everyone to do, those who are following along, please go ahead and you know, tag me on Facebook or Instagram, and I would love to see how your ear came out, and you know, any comments on, do you think it was good, or is it something that you want to continue studying? If anyone is interested in any really good anatomy books, let me know, and I'll be glad to share some really good titles with you. So as you see, this is a pretty impressive looking ear, only because it just looks totally real, right? And it looks correct. And it's really wasn't difficult once we knew what made up an ear. You know, what is the parts of the ear? And that beginning part was everything, really was. And that's basically it in a nutshell. So that is the forms of an ear. So this is what I want you to do when you get a chance, is to do some practicing. And I'm going to show you some ways that I practice. I'm going to show you guys very quickly on Krita. And let me go here. Now while I'm on Krita, I won't be able to see your comments. So I'm just going to very quickly pull up my tablet and we'll go to town. So let's see here. So when you do your own ears, well, your own drawings of your own ears, not necessarily your own ears. And let's go to Krita. Okay. So we'll just go ahead, come down here. Okay. So here we are. So, you know, you have your paper here, and basically you are just going to, you know, draw this shape. And the first shape that you're going to draw, of course, is always going to be the helix, right? So the helix is always going to be the most important thing, what you start, and maybe the beginning of the earlobe or something like that. And then you're going to do your antihelix, which is going to run parallel right here, but then it's going to break off like right about here. It's going to break off into two separate legs. So the helix only has one leg, but the antihelix has two. And remember, the antihelix is always divided by the the fossa here. This is the triangular fossa, which really helps, makes a triangle, and a fossa, I believe, means like chasm or hole, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me. So there we go. So you have the triangular fossa, and then this comes in here, and then usually uh, the helix sort of disappears and then is being taken over here by the antihelix, which comes in to the lobe, and then this tragus over here. So once you have these elements, and then this ear comes in here, and then those are things that I think could really help you into, drawing the ear here. And then of course you can erase what you don't need anymore. And so just by doing stuff like that, you're just going to begin to understand the ear and stuff like that. So if we go back to here, ooh, look at that. So let's see. So as you see here, I went ahead and did a color study of an ear. Just like that, by having the major forms. And then over here, you see that's how I would start with the helix, and then the antihelix, and then all these different parts. So just from going over today, you can see we have the tragus, we have the antihelix, the helix, the leg of the helix, the leg of the antihelix, the triangular fossa. Now look for those elements, of course the earlobe. Look for those elements when you're painting or drawing the ear, and it's really going to make your life so much easier. I mean, night and day easier. So definitely something that, oh yes, it is a very true. So basically go ahead and work on the ear. I'll go ahead and post the picture of this ear on my Facebook page. So if you need to go ahead and download it, that's all good. And so that's it for today's lesson. I really hope I hope it really helps. I hope it was something that was enjoyable. And more importantly, I hope it takes your artwork to the next level. And that's why I'm giving these free art lessons, because, we're all going through hard times, being stuck at home, not be able to do little things that means the world to us, whether it's going to see family or going to the gym in my case, or going to the bookstore or coffee shop. Those little things, they're really hard when we can't do them anymore. So if nothing else, every Saturday night for an hour or 2 hours, these free art lessons will really help. So this is what I want you to do. Look at ears differently. Don't just look at them as the ear. Go look at some paintings. See who nailed the ears correctly. Look at some diagrams, and just go on the internet, type in anatomy of the ear and print them out. You're welcome, Steve. So cool. Thank you so much for coming by. So definitely never look at an ear the same again, because they are so much more complicated. And once they're complicated, but once you know them, it's a lot easier. Catherine, you're welcome. And Willie, thanks for coming. Brad, thanks for coming. Denise, and just everyone. I really appreciate your time, and it means a lot to me. So, if you haven't, go ahead and pick up some of my India inks. If you haven't, there's a link. Let me see if I can quickly put a link to my mentorship program. And it'll just be one moment. My mentorship program is only $25 a week, which is unbelievable. I wish there was something like that when I was studying. So here is the link. I'm just going to copy this and put it right here. You're very welcome, Cheryl. So there's a link to my mentorship program. You see right there in the comments. And yes, don't go looking in people's ear. That's right. That's only for doctors. So guys, with that being said, have a great Saturday. God bless. Stay healthy. And I will be back next week with an even more fun, more informative class to take your artwork to the next level.